Most people think champions are born confident, fearless, or gifted, but that belief is the reason they never become one. A champion is forged the moment a person decides not to quit, when quitting would make sense. Not when the crowd is watching, not when results are guaranteed, but in silence, under pressure, uncertainty, and resistance. Before the world ever sees the victory, the champion has already made an internal decision. No matter how heavy it gets, I will not fold. This mindset is not built on motivation, applause, or easy wins. It is built on discipline, endurance, and an identity formed long before success arrives. A champion's mindset is not born in comfort, applause, or easy wins. It is forged in silence, pressure, and moments when quitting would feel justified. What separates champions from everyone else is not talent, luck, or even intelligence, but a deep internal decision that says, I will not fold when things get heavy. Long before the victory is visible, the champion has already decided who they are in the dark when no one is watching, clapping, or believing. This mindset does not wait for motivation. It moves on discipline. It does not wait for confidence. It builds confidence through action. A champion understands that the mind must be trained before the body, and identity must be solid before results appear. At the core of a champion's mindset is responsibility, full ownership, without excuses. Champions do not waste energy blaming circumstances, people, timing, or past mistakes. They look at reality directly, without emotion clouding the truth, and ask one powerful question: what can I control right now? This level of accountability creates freedom instead of pressure. When you stop outsourcing your power to external conditions, you reclaim your ability to respond, adapt, and advance. Champions know that excuses feel comforting but cost growth, while responsibility feels heavy but creates dominance. A champion thinks long-term in a world addicted to instant results. While others quit because progress is slow, champions understand that delayed reward is not a punishment. It is a filter. They stay committed during the invisible phase, trusting the process even when feedback is silent. This patience is not passive. It is focused endurance. Champions don't chase quick wins that sabotage future strength. They build foundations so solid that when momentum arrives, it becomes unstoppable. Their patience is strategic, not hopeful. Another defining trait of the champion's mindset is emotional control. Champions feel fear, doubt, frustration, and pressure just like everyone else, but they refuse to let emotions drive decisions. They train themselves to respond instead of react. When chaos rises, they slow down. When criticism appears, they extract lessons instead of collapsing. Emotional mastery allows champions to remain sharp under pressure, calm in uncertainty, and decisive when others freeze. This inner stability becomes a competitive advantage that no opponent can steal. Champions also understand that discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. They do what needs to be done even when motivation disappears. They don't negotiate with resistance, they move through it. Discipline becomes automatic because they have aligned their actions with identity. They no longer ask, "Do I feel like it?" They ask, "Is this who I said I am?" Over time, this consistency compounds into confidence, credibility, and unshakable belief. The champion's mindset begins the moment you stop waiting to feel ready and decide to show up anyway. It is built every time you keep a promise to yourself when no one is checking. Every moment of resistance faced without retreat strengthens your mental spine. You are not becoming a champion when you win, you become one when you refuse to quit before the win arrives. And once this mindset takes root, nothing external has the power to break you, because the foundation was built from within. A champion's mindset is revealed not in moments of inspiration, but in routines that are followed long after excitement fades. This is where most people fall off, when the novelty disappears and the work becomes repetitive, lonely, and demanding. Champions understand that consistency is not glamorous, but it is lethal to mediocrity. They don't wait for the perfect mood or ideal conditions. They move with precision even when energy is low, emotions are heavy, and progress feels invisible. This is where inner authority begins to form. Discipline for a champion is not about control, it is about alignment. Every action reinforces identity. When champions train, prepare, study or practice, they are not merely completing tasks, they are casting votes for the person they are becoming. This creates a powerful loop. Action strengthens identity, and identity strengthens action. Over time, this loop becomes automatic. The champion no longer battles themselves daily because their habits are anchored to who they believe they are. Champions understand that small, repeated actions shape destiny far more than rare bursts of effort. They respect the compound effect of daily discipline. While others underestimate small steps, champions know that showing up consistently builds momentum that cannot be faked. They are patient with results but ruthless with standards. This quiet persistence allows them to outperform people who rely on talent alone. Discipline becomes the great equalizer and eventually the separator. A champion's mindset also includes an uncompromising relationship with standards. They don't lower expectations to match comfort. They raise behavior to meet the standard they've set. Even when no one is watching, they execute with integrity. This internal code builds self-trust, and self-trust becomes confidence that does not depend on validation. When a champion says they will do something, they believe themselves, and that belief becomes power. Consistency also teaches champions emotional neutrality. They learn to perform regardless of mood. They stop labeling days as good or bad and instead treat each day as a chance to execute. This removes drama from the process and replaces it with focus. Champions don't romanticize struggle, but they also don't fear it. They accept that progress requires discomfort and that avoidance is more costly than effort. At this stage, the champion stops asking for permission to grow, to improve, to demand more from themselves. Discipline becomes self-respect, made visible. Consistency becomes proof of identity. And once inner authority is established, external pressure loses its power. You no longer need motivation when your habits are aligned with who you are. This is where champions separate permanently from distraction, from excuses, and from the version of themselves that once doubted they could endure. Pressure is the environment where champions are revealed, not destroyed. While most people fear pressure and try to avoid it, champions move toward it with intention. They understand that pressure exposes weaknesses so they can be strengthened. When the weight increases, the champion does not panic. They stabilize, they slow their breathing, sharpen their focus, and remind themselves that discomfort is not danger. This ability to remain grounded under stress becomes one of their greatest advantages. Failure to a champion is not an identity, it is information. Where others personalize setbacks, champions analyze them. They ask what broke, what slipped, what needs reinforcement. They don't collapse emotionally because they refuse to attach their worth to outcomes. This emotional separation allows them to recover faster, learn deeper, and return stronger. Failure becomes a training partner rather than an enemy, shaping resilience through repetition. Champions train their minds to expect resistance. They do not enter challenges hoping things will be easy. They prepare for obstacles in advance, mentally rehearsing calm responses to adversity. This pre-commitment reduces shock when things go wrong. Instead of spiraling, they adjust. They understand that the ability to adapt under pressure is more valuable than any perfect plan. Resilience for a champion is not loud or dramatic, it is quiet persistence. It is the refusal to abandon the mission when the outcome is uncertain. Champions learn to stay functional even when emotions fluctuate. They don't need to feel confident to act. They act, and confidence follows. Over time, this trains the nervous system to remain steady in chaos, making high-pressure environments feel familiar instead of threatening. Champions also develop a high tolerance for discomfort. They don't confuse discomfort with something being wrong. They understand that growth always feels unfamiliar at first. When pain shows up, they don't retreat, they assess. Is this pain teaching discipline, awareness, or endurance? If the answer is yes, they stay. This ability to endure discomfort without losing clarity separates champions from those who quit at the first sign of strain. Eventually, pressure stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like proof that you are doing something that matters, proof that you are stretching beyond who you used to be. The champion does not fear failure because they trust their ability to rise again. And once resilience becomes part of your identity, no setback can define you, only refine you. Champion's greatest advantage is not intensity, it is focus. While others scatter their energy across distractions, comparisons, and noise, champions learn to protect their attention like a strategic resource. They understand that whatever they repeatedly focus on grows stronger. Instead of obsessing over outcomes they cannot control, champions lock in on execution, improvement, and presence. This disciplined focus creates clarity, and clarity creates power. Champions develop self-belief not through blind confidence but through evidence. Every disciplined action, every promise kept, every obstacle faced becomes proof. This belief is quiet, grounded, and stable. It does not rise or fall with praise or criticism. Because it is built on consistency, it doesn't need validation. Champions trust themselves because they have shown up for themselves repeatedly, especially when it was inconvenient. Mental clarity allows champions to see reality without distortion. They do not exaggerate threats or underestimate their abilities. They assess situations objectively, separating facts from emotion. This clear thinking allows for better decisions under pressure and prevents impulsive reactions that sabotage progress. Champions don't rush clarity. They create it through stillness, reflection, and intentional thinking. Another defining trait of the champion's mindset is selective focus. They stop trying to be everything at once. They identify what truly matters and eliminate distractions without guilt. Champions understand that saying no is not a loss, it is a strategy. By narrowing their focus, they amplify their effectiveness. This discipline creates momentum that feels effortless to outsiders, but is intentional beneath the surface. Champions also learn to silence internal noise. Doubt, comparison, and overthinking do not disappear, but they lose authority. Instead of arguing with every negative thought, champions observe and redirect. They choose thoughts that support execution, not comfort. Over time, this mental training turns the mind from an obstacle into an ally. When focus becomes disciplined and belief becomes earned, confusion fades. You no longer chase direction, you move with it. The champion's mind becomes calm, decisive, and centered. Distractions lose their pull, doubt loses its voice. And in this clarity, you begin to operate from inner certainty rather than external approval. Every champion pays a price long before they collect rewards. This price is not always visible, applauded, or understood by others. It shows up as missed comforts, lonely routines, and choices that look unnecessary to people who don't share the vision. Champions accept early that sacrifice is not loss, it is investment. They understand that saying yes to a higher future requires saying no to short-term pleasure. Solitude becomes a familiar space for champions, not because they dislike people, but because deep focus demands distance from noise. In solitude, champions refine their thoughts, strengthen discipline, and reconnect with purpose. While others seek constant stimulation, champions value stillness. This quiet time allows them to hear their own direction clearly, without interference from outside opinions or expectations. Delayed gratification is a defining skill in the champion's mindset. Champions resist the urge for immediate validation. They are willing to work without recognition, improve without applause, and struggle without sympathy. They trust that effort compounded over time will speak louder than early celebration. This patience builds emotional strength and protects them from the instability of external approval. Champions also accept that their path will be misunderstood. When others question their choices or label them obsessed, extreme, or unrealistic, champions remain grounded. They do not argue their vision, they execute it. They understand that explanation is often a form of seeking permission, and champions do not need permission to pursue excellence. Sacrifice sharpens priorities. Champions become highly selective with their energy, time, and commitments. They stop entertaining distractions disguised as opportunities. Everything they allow into their life must either support recovery or progress. This level of discernment creates an environment where growth becomes inevitable. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, the champion keeps going. No applause, no reassurance, just discipline and belief moving forward together. This is where true strength is built, not in recognition but in resolve. And when the results finally appear, they don't feel like luck. They feel earned, because the champion was already living at the level of the outcome long before it arrived. At the highest level, a champion's mindset is no longer something they practice. It is who they are. Effort becomes natural. Discipline becomes instinct. Resilience becomes identity. Champions no longer ask if they can endure, because endurance has already been proven. They move with quiet certainty, knowing that their standards are non-negotiable. Champions operate from principle rather than emotion. They don't abandon values when circumstances shift. Whether under pressure, praise, or isolation, their behavior remains stable. This internal consistency creates trust, with themselves first, and then with others. People begin to sense this stability, this grounded authority, without a single word being spoken. Legacy thinking separates champions from competitors. Champions don't ask what feels good now, they ask what will matter later. Every decision is filtered through long-term impact. This perspective expands their patience and sharpens their discipline. They understand that what they build internally will eventually shape external results, and those results will outlive temporary emotions. The champion also understands responsibility beyond self. Their discipline becomes example, their resilience becomes permission for others to rise. Without trying to inspire, they do, because consistency speaks louder than motivation. Champions elevate environments simply by showing what is possible through commitment and integrity. At this stage, fear loses its influence. Doubt may appear, but it no longer dictates behavior. The champion has faced too much resistance, endured too much discomfort, and honored too many commitments to be shaken easily. Confidence is no longer loud, it is settled. The champion moves forward without urgency, without panic, and without the need to prove anything. The champion's mindset is not about winning once, it is about becoming unbreakable. It is built choice by choice, day by day, long before the world notices. When challenges arise, the champion does not search for strength, they remember who they are. And from that identity, quitting is no longer an option. Only progress remains.